So good afternoon, morning, evening, from wherever you guys are tuning in from, and welcome to today's session of Emergence Global. I'm Hugo DuPont, and I'll be your host for today's session. For today, I'm very excited to welcome Andrew Zinchuk, Managing Partner at ZAS Ventures. Andrew Zinchuk is a VC and entrepreneur with extensive experience in all stages of a startup ecosystem. Andrew was the ex-managing director at a pre-team, pre-idea startup incubator. He has advised over 100 startups by acting as an advisor and mentor at Antler, SeedStars, and Ukrainian Startup Fund. Andrew is currently the founder and managing partner at ZAS Ventures. ZAS Ventures is an early stage fund in San Francisco that invests in SaaS and cloud in Central and Eastern Europe that target the US market. Thank you for joining us today, Andrew.
Hi, Hugo. Thanks for inviting. Pleasure to join.
The floor is yours.
Okay, awesome. So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining. I hope you're gonna have some good time and get better to know Ukrainian tech ecosystem. As myself, I'm a founder with a background, as Hugo mentioned, but I'm also a Ukrainian, and I'm actually now in Ukraine, and was the entire year of the war I was here, so I had a first-hand experience going through this with Ukrainian tech ecosystem, and I would like to share with you what's going on with Ukrainian tech. Maybe we were not following that much Ukraine before, but now it's a good time to start looking on Ukraine, because Ukraine is actually Europe's biggest tech country. And we were very strong as an entrepreneurship hub. We also are world's R&D lab. So we're gonna break into this in on further slides, but this is like the high time for everyone to start checking on Ukraine. So first of all, in terms of the tech talent that I've mentioned, so Ukraine currently has from 230 to 250,000 employees in the tech sector. And our government estimates that we're going to be growing to almost double this number by to 450,000 employees. And Ukraine is actually the home for the highest number of tech grads. So we have about 23,000 IT graduates annually that we're adding. So we have over 181 universities. So basically, Ukraine is one of the top 3 largest outsourced countries in the world. And all of this tech talent help us to create a lot of unicorns, a lot of startups. So as you can see, just before the war, Ukrainian tech ecosystem so tech ecosystem was rising very quickly. So in 2021, Ukraine was on, according to Startup Blink, Ukraine was on the 34th position globally, and Kyiv was 33rd position globally. The war did some setback for us, but we are still, as of 2022, we are still in the top 50 ecosystems worldwide. Ukraine has 22 different tech clusters across the country. There is over 1,700 IT product companies, 7 associations. Myself, I'm a member of Ukrainian Venture Capital Association. I will tell you more about that a little bit later. We have basically gazillion of events happening in Ukraine annually. So it's like over 3,000 events, and we have over 3,000 scale-ups and startups in Ukraine. What's interesting that Ukrainians are ranked in the top 10 for founders in US-based unicorns, and we have 8 unicorns founded by Ukrainians with that are currently valued over $80 billion. So that's companies like Revolut, GitLab, Grammarly, Affirm, Sila Nanotechnologies, People AI, Firefly, Genesis, Amazon Rain. It's a lot of names, but what's interesting, so for Ukrainian, despite like the Ukrainian ecosystem is growing, but it's still young. On average, for Ukrainian startups, it took 8 years to become to get the unicorn status, which goes along with the global industry trend. And we have what's also interesting, that this 250,000 Ukrainian developers that were having experience with IT outsource companies or product companies, and especially working on the EU and US markets, they actually start going very rapidly into building their own startups. And I witnessed this myself, the first hand, once I was managing a pre-team, pre-idea startup incubation program. So we had about in 2 years, I had 1,500 people applying, and one third of it was actually developers that decided that they don't want to sit on the bench, or they don't want to work on the projects for someone else, and start going and doing it itself. So my take is that Ukraine will be growing even faster. We're gonna have even more startups in the coming years, and even more unicorns. So as you can see, some companies I already mentioned, but also we have a lot of companies, product companies that have the very strong revenue internationally. Also, Ukraine is the world's R&D lab, and we work with Oracle, Samsung. You see a lot of Rakuten. There's a lot of companies here, and this trend is going to be even growing after the war. What's next? What is here for the startups, right? So we have very favorable conditions for the startups. So it's an easy administration. There is not much excessive regulations. Co-workings in Ukraine and Kiev especially are amazing. It's like super developed network of co-workings with different niches that can provide very a lot of like background and then administration services. We have Ukrainian Startup Fund, which I'm also a member of selection committee. So it's a pre-seed and seed state fund backed by Ukrainian government and World Bank. And it's a 18 million fund, and they give away equity-free grants. So as of now, Ukrainian Startup Fund was created in 2020. So they gave away about 250 checks worth of 6.5 million. And a lot of startups actually raised the subsequent rounds and now growing very fast. So Ukrainian Startup Fund became number one early stage investor in Ukraine. And it's what's also important. A lot of startups move here to work out of Ukraine because you have very cool and high quality of lifestyle and very vibrant ecosystem. Even myself, I've moved back to Ukraine in 2014 from New York, and I'm still kind of live here full time, but do business globally and just travel out of Ukraine for business. So, and the last but not the least, maybe it's even the most important, I should have started with. It's very easy access to talent. It's very easy to find talent with a very high quality. In one of my companies, we were scaling from one person. I was the first guy in the team, and we scaled to 200 people in just 1 year. And another company I was also managing, we were having 150 people, and 30% of the people were coming out of Ukraine. So it's very easy to find like very good talent with relatively are not that expensive comparing to like Western Europe or even Europe, or especially the West Coast US. So this makes your business, if you start hiring Ukrainians, more capital efficient. As to investor side, our ecosystem is pretty developed. In Ukrainian Venture Capital Association, we have about 40 members. Half of them are VCs themselves, but the rest are also like service companies that help with the ecosystem stuff. Also, there is a lot of investors. There is over 100 investors globally that did deals in Ukrainian ecosystem and invested in Ukrainian startups like Anderson Horowitz Fund, Soros Fund. There's like big number of funds. So in overall, Ukrainian ecosystem was growing pretty quickly, and our startups raised in 2021. It's the latest data available. They raised about $800 million. So with investors, it's easy to find a local partner like ZES Ventures. So we are spread between the San Francisco and Kiev, and we actually a gateway for Western funds if they want to do any deals specifically within Ukraine, because we have deep roots to our tech ecosystem, and we can help to validate the team. We can help help to find the talent. We have very strong deal source here. And of course, there is an elephant in the room, which is the war, and everyone is curious how was it and how much effect it caused and damage to Ukrainian sector. And being myself, the first day of the war, I woke up from the explosions in the Kiev and everything. I had to move to west of Ukraine because it was completely uncertain. And the same happened to probably the most of the companies. As you can see, like 50 to 57,000 tech specialists moved abroad, but most of them were women. Of course, a lot of teams that like 56% of Ukrainian startup teams that changed location. So at the beginning of the war in early 2022, teams, especially from central and eastern Ukraine, were relocating to west of Ukraine, where it was relatively more safe. Some teams move abroad. Partial, like 28% is partially abroad, and only 1% of the teams completely left the Ukraine. So kind of that was the biggest stress, and the second stress was actually caused by the fact that Russia was hitting critical infrastructure, and we had power shortages. But that was actually a point of resilience. So all of the companies managed to get Starlinks, to get alternative routes of electricity, like buying diesel generators, and they actually, as you can see, that the 85% of companies resume activities in full or close to pre-war level. 77% companies, like large tech companies, they retain all customers, and this is like, I know a lot of founders of the IT outsource product companies, and there were the times that the customers were trying to kind of drop the contracts, but the fact that they managed to get Starlinks, they managed to distribute resources between Ukrainian offices and their offices like worldwide, so they kept these contracts. And yeah, there is some facts where the teams were fully relocated, but I know other facts that some IT companies even have their own like bomb shelters and bulletproof glass, like so they were putting millions of dollars in their buildings that make them safe. As to the startups, the super cool fact is that 250 startups that are in portfolio of VCs, they also continued going and no one closed down. They experienced some slowdown, but no one closed. And also, this is my experience. Initially, through the 2022, I managed to speak with my partners to about 250 startups from Ukraine, and most of them are actually still working. They had troubles, like everything that could go wrong, they went wrong, but they kind of overcome and get new traction in new markets like EU market or the US market. So it was very challenging, but that's actually was a proof of resilience and creativity, and in a good sense, probably a stubbornness of Ukrainians. So we will never give up. What's more interesting that even before the war, there was lack of early stage funding. As you can see, Ukrainian's startup ecosystem was growing pretty quickly. So we were growing in terms of the amount of money raised. We were growing from like 40% year over the year. And it was $780 million raised in 2021. I think there's going to be in the months probably the data for the 2022, and I think there will be at least 30 to 40% drop in the amount of the money raised. But the fact is that only there is a very big gap for early stage funding, and if you can see on this on a pie chart on the right, so it's only from 780 million raised, only 3% were to pre-seed and 5 to seed stage, and 0.4% was invested by Ukrainian startup fund. So now we have actually over 200 startups that are actively raising, and this is actually brings us to a very unique opportunity because as of now, there's like local investors usually don't invest because most of them, if it's a corporate venture fund, CVCs, so they're focusing mostly on fixing the problems caused by the war, and other funds are out of Ukraine. The mostly that we have here are mostly family offices by the natures, so they also kind of on a pause. There are still some active investors, but not that much, and basically there is a lack of pre-seed funding and seed funding. So, and it's a very good opportunity because even before the war, valuations range from 600K to 1.5 million, and now they probably would go even lower. And if we compare it to US pre-seed, which is like 6 million, maybe with a market downturns goes lower, but still there's the valuation gap is huge. And that's very great, actually, opportunity to invest now. And also, as you can see on the right hand side, the slide from McKinsey, that Eastern European startups produce almost 6 times more revenue per invested dollar if we would compare it to US peers. Being said that, like me and my partner, we decided to do something special and take opportunity, leverage opportunity, and also help the startups in Ukraine. So we decided to come up with what's called Brave Ukraine Fund. And idea is very simple. It's very small fund to invest in the pre-seed stage startups, and with extra layer of safety. So we would be investing with in tranches per KPIs. And the fact is that a lot of startups actually from Ukraine, they got traction in EU market or US market, but they're facing the problem. First problem is that as they lost their home market traction, they get new traction, and the traction is not sufficient enough to raise a proper round. That's one side of the problem. But even though if there is a startup with a cool traction, and it's actually one of our latest deals we invested in, startup was growing like 40% months over the months, and now have in early May we were talking to them. They had 20K MRR. Now they have about almost like 55,000 MRR, and we did the deal with them. Actually, will be announced pretty shortly. So that's like exception. And they had their team fully relocated to Poland, so they managed to get like big VCs on board. Plus, most of the startups still have teams in Ukraine, and from risk compliance for most of the VCs, it's like no go. So that's why we're building a fund that can actually help the startups to get to the next round, and with our help, and we're gonna help them to bring like bigger investors with us. So yeah, this is just one pager. But if you're interested, don't be shy to contact me on LinkedIn or via email. Probably this will be all in general of the overview, but I will open the floor for the questions. So Hugo, please.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That was extremely interesting, and yeah, I think I have a few questions, and I think the first question has to do with your quote. In the midst of every crisis lies great opportunities. I think one of my first questions is, what opportunities have you seen come out of the last 13 months, 14 months in Ukraine with the war, and what kind of innovations have come around more so than previously?
Well, now we have a new trend for dual purpose startups, right? And also the drones. There's all sorts of drone startups in Ukraine. So now we have about what's public, it's over like 200 companies, and we're forming a drone association of Ukraine. So that's going to be like really big. I think Ukraine will be one of, in the next 5 years, Ukraine will turn like into one of the top 5 drone producers. Also, everything that is like dual tech, military tech, this is actually like a playground for all of the big guys to test their technology. And I think after the war, there will be a lot of news about what was used and tested here, right? But there is a lot of innovation also coming from the ground, from Ukrainian teams, also even from the soldier. I know the guy who never was into tech that much, but he came up with a solution how to locate the coordinates of artillery when it was shot. And this device is cost like 10 times cheaper than US peers. So now Ukraine just did the first batch of 80 devices that will be used by our soldiers. And it's coming from from grassroots, right? So this is like one direction. Another direction is also Ukraine became on the scene and a lot on the radar is a lot of the big investors. So like myself, I know at least 2 funds which are which are raised about $800 million to $1 billion that will be invested in economy. So they like this is of course this is like these distressed assets, and a lot of will go towards infrastructure, critical infrastructure, but a lot of will go also into like private equity stuff. So this is also like an opportunity because before people like Ukraine was kind of there were a lot of good sparks of PR of Ukraine, but there were like revolution and stuff, right? People were gradually like getting of Ukraine, but now this is like this war is like there will be no such country in the world that doesn't know about Ukraine and how we kick the asses of Russian Nazis, right? So for us, it's kind of the best PR and opportunity here. I mean, I know, for example, one founder and a lot of people. I mean, I shouldn't say a lot, but like particular example, there is a guy who was in cybersecurity. He was back in a day in the U.S. military. He was coming to Ukraine in the early war days to help, and he said like, "Hey, I was so amazed because I was in so many wars, and I never saw that the people, the civilians, were actually trying to help. They cared. They not were just running away, but they were, taking a stand and fighting." So he got so amazed. So now he's raising like 60 or 80 million fund to invest actually in cybersecurity, in dual purpose startups, in space, like and fintechs verticals. So and this is like the person came and stayed here. It's like another guy who's also was very respectable in San Francisco tech scene, and he came to Ukraine and he stays. Now we're helping him to get his documents. So like people get in this sense, and this is like different. This is like something that we're still like a lot of opportunities. You can feel this freedom, right? There's a lot of niches and there's a lot of technologies that actually not like today. I just spoke prior to join for this session. I talked to Ukrainian startup, and also the war kind of accelerated them. They had very cool product here, and they were thinking of going for EU market only in 2023. And they, because of the war, they actually managed to relocate like before the war, a couple of weeks prior to that. And now they start tapping the market, European market, like in 2022, and they operate in 7 countries. So it's a lot of like, a lot of people who lost, you lost something, but you also look for opportunity, what you get out of this situation. And especially like a lot of Ukrainians going to the West now, living there, and like 73% actually wanted to come back, but they will come back with a different perspective on the world, right? With different knowledge, and this is a new connection is gonna be established. So I think this is like for Ukraine after the war, the rebuild and acceleration phase will be super fast, and this is like what excites me. Like I'm staying here. I don't want to leave. Like even despite like the once, every 2 weeks. We had before there was bomb strikes and like missile strikes, but then now we have once a month, but still like air defense system works, electricity fixed. We stay and kind of, you get used to everything, but what's funny, I know what's coming, and it's going to be, I want to be part of this, super dynamic ecosystem.
Fantastic. No, that sounds, it sounds like the Ukrainian people are extremely resilient in these times. And I guess it kind of leads me to my other question is, what do you think makes the startup ecosystem so resilient? You talked about they were top 2024, right? And they're still in the top 50 even after a whole year of war. So what do you think makes this Ukrainian startup ecosystem so resilient during these tough times?
I mean, I think it's by nature. We kind of anarchist. Ukraine was the first anarchy state in the world. It's kind of maybe on the fun side, right? But kind of we don't like usually the Ukrainians are like bees, right? They do their job. If you don't touch them, they never hurt you. But if you poke, you're gonna get like, we unite. And this is like really true about Ukrainians. And we were one of the first democracies in the world, right? We were the first constitution was voted in Ukraine of Polyporlik. But for us, it's several things. There's it's not like we don't have a place to retreat, because you are killed for speaking Ukrainian language. You killed for being Ukrainian. You are killed for living here. It's not like I have my family. I have deep roots and I can track my family. But when Nazis came, like they even live in my grandma's house, but they were sharing like some food, and they were not killing people. They haven't kicked them out of the house. What Russians did in Bucha, they just slaughtered people like who trying to evacuate with kids. I mean, there's so many stories. So for us, there's like no way going back. There's no way to give up, right? Also, I think in terms of economy, right, the market is shrinking, and of course of the Western, not maybe global crisis. That's better to put it this way. A lot of like tech people are getting losing jobs. It also affects Ukraine, and those people who were working for the IT companies, they understand that like, hey, there is two options. Like either I can start looking for something, or I can create my own future. And the Ukrainians very entrepreneurial, so a lot of them will actually go to either create something of their own, or they will start joining the teams. Now, like before the war, it was super hard to find like senior developer. They were jumping jobs, and because the demand was crazy. Now, because of this global trends, that's became way easier to do so, and it also will help the startups. It's one hand side. Also, because cost of living in Ukraine is like probably, I don't know, comparing to San Francisco, probably 5-6 times lower. I mean, right? So you can decently live here for $3,000 if you like, with living the life of someone who was making $300,000 in San Francisco, even more. You're not going to live the same kind of life with all of the taxes. Like here, you would pay 5% tax if you were like as a private entrepreneur work for IT company. 5% tax is a dream, right? You're not paying 35, not 50, not 60, like whatever the Denmark or other countries have. And then basically with 3K in your pocket, you can, eat in the restaurants every day, kind of live a luxury life. And this makes like kind of, and it turns into edge, because if you make, 5, 10K, you have a lot of savings, and you can turn this money and you can invest into something. But it's also for the companies, it's better to hire people from here, because still of the discrepancy of the sellers. So it also turns into a competitive edge.
Okay, fantastic. And just in terms, you mentioned that your Brave Ukraine Fund, right? That is something new for you. Could you maybe explain a bit more, how your investment strategy or focus has changed since the outbreak of the war about 14 months ago?
Sure. Yeah. So before the war, we had the focus on seed stage startups from Eastern Europe, like primarily Baltic states, Ukraine, Poland, like Czech Republic, like every neighboring country except Russia. We never liked the war is going since 2014, so we don't deal with Russians. But and like Ukraine would be like 30 to 40% of the portfolio. But with the war, we said like, okay, we're just gonna, because like I'm Ukrainian and I'm founder of the fund, and like half of the team is also Ukrainian. So we said like, hey, we need to help Ukrainians as well and focus primarily on Ukraine. So that's why we're doing like pre-seed, seed stage deals only with and helping Ukrainian startups, because it's like it's twofold, right? In the first place, it's about business and making like investing and building like startups, but also as a on a different side, it's also about helping Ukraine, because with our money and our investment, we're gonna be creating jobs, right? And like people, we're gonna be hiring people here, and we'll actually facilitate the recovery of Ukraine. So for us, it's as of now, this is like the prime focus, actually, just to work with Ukrainian startups. That's why we did this Brave Fund, because uh, through the last year, we saw all of these startups, and actually who were fighting, like, you know, so some founders went fighting, and I know a couple examples. Like one of the startups recently raised 1 million from Smoke Ventures, and one of the founders is still fighting, and they have the problems signing the deal, because they were thinking how they're going to get the founders to sign, right? There's one potential target of the startup. Two founders are also fighting, and but they're doing, like, it's called, maybe I'll do a little bit commercial, it's called Drill App. So it's an app where you can teach how to do drills with your guns, and they have like 35 or 40,000 users, and like at least 30 minutes of active use daily per user. So like it's a super cool metrics when all of the team works pro bono right now. So, and this is like resilience and kind of this good stubbornness that I'm taking. And you cannot, I mean, it's hard to find something, the evidence of this. Of course, there is like the same stubborn and very resilient founders, but this is like gems on top, floating, and you like just, hey, why not to pick up them and, you know, do good things at the same time.
Yeah, it's great. You know, you just mentioned drill apps. Is there any other success stories of companies in Ukraine, especially in the maybe in pre-seed or seed, that you have invested in, and how have they contributed to maybe, you know, we talked last week when we were on the early stage investment panel, you talked about the drones, and today again you touched on that. Do you have any success stories with drones or any other companies?
I'm not following like drones super closely. We have one company that is it's pretty big. They scaled to North America, but not with with air surveillance. So they on the West Coast now, kind of conquering the market. But the other stories, like there's this startup founder that's called Electronic KYC, LKYC. So the founder is Dennis. We created the startup in our incubation program. But the guy, he's actually from Chernihiv. It's northeast from Kiev, and actually was the direction where 30,000 of Russian troops were coming. And the guy, so he evacuated from Kiev to Chernihiv, and he ended up staying a month in his basement, because, like, I mean, that was super dangerous to go even out of the basement, right? The city was sieged, and basically, like, they were shelling off the city. But he managed to not only save the team, but he managed also to raise 250K just right after. I met him last year, early, what was it, late April or May in Lviv, and he like ran away from. I mean, when the city was like with Russians were kicked out from the city, so he went to Lviv with only his like laptop and, you know, winter jacket, and it's where all of his belongings. And this is like also a cool example. And we have even entire like there was a big article about Ukrainian like resilient startups. Another cool story is called Drugcart. So that's a pharmaceutical, like a pharmaceutical startup. They scrap mentions of drugs, and it's legally binding by all of the companies that they would track their markets on some like misuse of the drugs or kind of side effects. So usually pharmaceutical companies, they either hire people internally to do so, or they kind of outsource to like Indians or whatever. So they did this kind of scrapper that tracks all of the markets, and they had like local investor, one of the CVCs, and the largest Ukrainian pharmaceutical company was using them and actually also invested in them. And then they lost all of the traction in Ukraine because pharmaceutical company lost 1 billion of worth of warehouse of stocks because of the bomb hit them, right? And now they're losing all of the traction in Ukraine, and they were just kind of finishing the product to start going abroad, and they did. So now they I don't know. Last time I talked to them, they had 7 contracts already in Europe, and keep growing. So this is like also cool example of the startup with resilience.
Absolutely. I think that's the key word, right? Resilience and perseverance. Are you, you know, are you seeing a lot of founders and the executive team leaving Ukraine, or do you find that a lot of them are actually staying put and growing it in Ukraine? Yeah.
I mean, you can't leave Ukraine like if you want or not because we have a martial law, right? So basically, uh, there's stories when people were on vacation or some kind of, or if you have 3 kids, so those lived, or if you were on a vacation, most people, like some people just never came back. But there are some actually people who like even quit their jobs and came fighting. So there's like different stories. Like even like friend of mine, he used to be IBM. CFO for CIS countries region, and he went as an infantry and started fighting. Like now I mean, I don't know what's the right wording for this, but because of the medical reasons, he's out of army now. He cannot serve anymore. But this is like a lot of people, even like white collar, blue collars, they went fighting. So there's, I wouldn't say like a lot of females, actually the girls, the women, they left the country, and it's not kind of the place to be. It's especially if you have like thin psychology, it's very hard to hear, sometimes the explosion or something. They're like, you get used to now, it's not scary because you know what to expect, what to do, where to run. It becomes common, like, right? But early days it was pretty scary because no one knew what's happening, where the trend is going. Now we know this is like, okay, we're gonna have our counter assault. We have air defense system very good, so like working, like taking 80% of the missiles like Russians is shooting, like trying to destroy like critical infrastructure. So like the chances of something bad happening to you are like a super slim. Yes, maybe it's not that comfortable. I have to walk 15 floors to my apartment when there were blackouts, and this is not nice, but at least I got a good feed. So it was a very nice workout. So yeah, so the team, like, maybe it's a curvy answer to your question, but uh, if you lived in Ukraine and you stayed until now, like people will not leave because you see the values in the different of lifestyle. Like myself, I lived in Canada, I lived in States. I travel a lot worldwide, and I still choose to be here. And even I have opportunity to live probably everywhere I want in the world.
It's really remarkable. That's all I can say. I think the story of the Ukrainian people, and especially in the startup ecosystem, which is the one I'm familiar with, is really remarkable. Now, maybe changing the conversation slightly, with ZAS Ventures being based in San Francisco, what strategies do you use to bridge the gap between the US and Central and Eastern European startup ecosystems?
Yeah, so for us, like it doesn't matter if it's a pre or seed stage. So for us, it's important to help startups to get to the next round, right? So we have a network of about 220 VCs worldwide that can like co-invest with us or at the later stages. So and that's our strategy. So once we get the board, we say, hey, we're looking at the startups, we look at the metrics and how we can help. And there are a few core things. First is recruiting. We have a special venture partner who's focusing only on recruiting and supporting the teams on the people side, right? Also, the second part, we have Dave Motley, who's very seasoned CMO, and basically he is focusing on from seed to Series A to build like growth engine, to build sales team, especially if it's a B2B. So that's also our kind of core that we help, because we was having partners in the States and that are Americans. We helping the basically we understand the market, because sometimes the teams they don't know that like every market has own quirks and features, right? So you like with us understanding them, we help them to accelerate this learning curve and to do like the right marketing campaigns to and have, or even if it's like B2C, B2B, we have a lot of people in our net. We have mentor network, and it's like over 50 people, and it's people working in like big tech, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, like all of the top tech companies like IBM, etc. So who can like open the doors, who can facilitate the growth by like intros, or saying which door to knock. And that's kind of how we're kind of bridging this gap. And for us, it's important also to bring more investors to Eastern Europe, and especially to Ukraine right now, because there is like way more startups that need help that we can invest, and this growth rate will be even bigger. Because right now, before the war, we had 7 active acceleration programs here in Ukraine, and like I'm active in the ecosystem like since 2014. Since I came back, I was a founder myself. I was trying to do a startup, and then 2017 I joined Ukrainian Venture Capital Association. So I was looking already from VC side, and the learning curve that the founders went through, it's like big difference. Like if you were talking of Ukraine 2014, 17, and and these days, like the founders themselves, they prepare a better pitch, they pitch better, they know that to put what's needed to be put in data rooms, they understand the trend. So it's way easier to deal with them than again in 2017. No one knew, most people didn't even know like YC, or that there is like free resources and what's safe, and like some basic things. And now that's changing, and this is going to create even a bigger. And there's a lot of success stories of Ukrainians with exits. One of my investors in the fund, and he invests along with our syndicate. So the guy, he's a founder himself. He exited to UEPath. There is like more Ukrainian founders who did exit, who got vested and served in the company, and now they have from $500,000 to a couple of millions, and they also want to give back and kind of course and invest, but give back to society. So this is kind of helping up and to accelerate the growth of the ecosystem.
Cool. Yeah, no, very, very insightful. Definitely. What do you think needs to happen? You touched upon this earlier, that having more investors come into Ukraine to invest in, or Central and Eastern Europe. What do you think needs to happen? What do you think needs to change for more investors to open their eyes to the Central and Eastern European market as well as Ukraine?
First of all, we need to win the war, because this is a big game changer. I know a couple funds that were raising like 100 million, 80 million, and all of them on hold. They cannot close this much because all of the IFIs, they said, okay, we have to wait out. Even though they went through the diligence, and they basically were 1 minute away from getting the money, but this whole macro political situation is kind of not helping, right? And I'm talking from VC perspective, because if we talk private equity, it's a different story. From VC, like if we talk, let's say, I like to talk about Ukraine. So if you talk about Ukraine, right, the companies of the startups, if they have let's say US traction, they are domiciled in Delaware, right? So technically, you're not investing in the US, in Ukrainian startup. You're investing from your US bank to whatever, the Mercury, infamous now Silicon Valley Bank, whatever. So right, the money goes from US to US. All IP is also in the US. the only thing is attached to Ukraine, like Grammarly, like Ukrainian unicorn. But they have office like now. It's Ukrainian team who did this, right? But it's now global startup. But it was Ukrainian, right? But most of the team is still in Ukraine. So yeah, there is some risk maybe involved with that people are here, but also it's like also risks come with opportunity. So like, and the war is number one. Also, it's about like a risk appetite and the philosophy, because some investors are still investing like just in the US, and only if the all investors, all of the team, key team members are in the US, because it's a part of their thesis, or it's because of the LPs they have. They cannot, you have your LPA agreement, limited partnership agreement, right? And you cannot invest outside of the scope that you were provided. So if you have still this fund that was raised and it's second, third year with this thesis, you cannot just say, hey, I switch my strategy completely. So you have to keep going with what you're going. And now with like especially Ukraine is on the rise in terms of awareness. A lot of new funds will be coming up, like FF Ventures. They said they do gonna do 50 million fund on Ukrainian founders, right? Uh, and it's a new strategy. It's a new entire fund for them just dedicated to Ukraine, and it's going to be happening like a lot.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that it's definitely put. I mean, not that I wasn't on the map, but it's definitely put on the map in terms of that awareness. But given for you for your ventures, given the geopolitical situation, right? What steps do you take in your investments to ensure the safety and security of your investments and provide the companies the support? So maybe that's two questions. So let's go for the first one. How do you ensure that your investment is safe as you can be in this situation, and secure?
And it's pretty simple. Like, right, there is a business risk, there is political risk. Like, with in terms of political risks, I mean, technically founders or I hear, right, and they work for their companies who are like US based, like Delaware based or European based. So like all the money sits in that market, the all of IP sits here, they just receiving the salary here. So the worst that can happen, like, okay, maybe he can be drafted. That's super, but it's probably the worst risk that can happen, or extra risk besides a normal business risk that involved with the startups. And for us, it's this extra feature of trenches and KPIs, right? Because this way we can say, hey, there is a chance that especially if it's an early like pre-seed stage startup. So for us is because a lot of you can have a mental breakdown. There is a lot of risk that might come out of the word that might not be predicted, right? But that's why we're saying, hey, we signed, let's say, a deal for like 100K, but we're gonna do like four installments of 25K per KPIs, or whatever we agreed on with the startup. They have to believe in these KPIs. It's not like us telling them, how high to jump when we tell to jump. It's about like realistically, because we actually as partners with them was like extra co-founder for them, that helping them to get to the next stage.
Okay. And just looking ahead, what are your plans for the future in terms of investment opportunities in Ukraine, and how do you envision the company's role in shaping the future of the startup ecosystem there?
So we want to do with this Brave Fund, we want to do 34 initial checks in 2 years. So it's like pretty aggressive for us. And but there is a lot of startups to invest with. And what's also important that as a fund, we want to become number one active player for early stage in Ukraine, and we want to have even more deals to be co-invested with us. So we are very open for VCs or angel syndicates to co-invest with us, because this is about helping. For us, this fund in the first place, it's about helping the startups to grow. And we have a second fund, the seed stage fund, that is on hold right now, that we will be investing and on pro rata basis for the pipeline that we already have, right? So that's why we want to have as maximum like co-investors as partners with us to invest. And also as a syndicate this year, we plan to do about 7 to 10 deals, depends how it goes. So usually syndicate we will be doing like seed stage deals for his valuation. Like recently, so I have now a couple, like 4 startups with valuation from 6 to 10 million, but those already with a very strong traction. So we want to become like the goal is to become number 1 early stage fund. And I think we are we're going to do so, but it's going to need a little bit of time.
Okay. Yeah. And what sectors are you looking at, or is it sector agnostic? In the Brave Ukraine Fund.
Brave Ukraine Fund is industry agnostic, 100%. But I'm looking for startups with high scalability potential. So I don't like hardware myself, so I'm never gonna I'm doing hardware deals. I like if it's a B2B, that can be a low touch model or mid touch model. So basically, there is no need for onboarding and customer support, like when the startup can grow quickly, or like B2C stuff.
Okay.
And the reason also for not like in the US, it's very common question like, oh, you're industry agnostic. How come? Like you should focus on something, right? Like now, there is literally very few investors, and you can pick the cream out of the market. And I invest in those startups where I understand I can help. I can bring more investors on board, or I can help them raise the next round. And that's like it's agnostic, but I focus to the parts where I can help and which markets I understand, right? But there is, if I would say I will invest only in fintech, I would not have enough deal flow, like sufficient good deal flow that is worth the investment, and kind of chaining myself to one vertical or 2 verticals and just distributing money. I'm responsible for LP money, right? With a fiduciary responsibility, so I have to make money back, right? If I you live only like this is relationship business. If you screw up, you don't like deliver on what you promised, you're never going to raise the next fund. And for me, it's like, of course, I have responsibilities. I understand them, and I look for the startups that are, can return the fund and can make LPs happy and myself as well along the road.
Okay. And apart from investment, you talked about the support that you provide. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on the kind of support that you have expertise on, and maybe ZAS Ventures in general have expertise on?
Yeah, myself, it's business development, financial modeling, cap table modeling, because a lot of startups early stage, they don't look on their fundraising strategy you have to look from the potential exit, right? And kind of scale it down to where you are right now. And a lot of them say, oh, we're gonna fundraise or whatever the valuation this investor gives them. They're not looking into this. They're like, okay, maybe it's nice that at least someone put the price tag. So it's on my hand side. Then on my side, there is also, if it's an early stage startup, it's on the tech architecture system. Also, like on the tech stack, it's Artem, my partner. So he is a senior executive as a chief business transformation officer for many businesses here in Ukraine. So he can definitely help with the tech stack, with low code, no code solutions to validate, or kind of when you need to pivot, or even kind of scale, like or to launch the subline, or validate problem solution or whatever MVP. It's marketing on the US side, like strategic marketing. Like Dave is one of the best marketing officers. I got to work with. He's the guy behind the success of Harry Potter franchise. So he did from money losing franchise, he turned into the most lucrative franchise in the world. So that's he used to work for me when he was my CMO of the company I was in charge of. And and then recruiting and everything was like human resources people side. So with the startup, we can help find co-founders. We can help if it's required, to fill the gap, or if we can find help to find the top talent that will be also like driving the startup success. So that's kind of probably the four things that we help with. And of course, the
Yeah,
network of the VCs. I did this specific exercise because I was like always, like guessing how much VCs we have in network, and it's like over 220 VCs with, that we have very like lasting established connections worldwide.
that's like, so I guess, being time conscious, just a last question. What advice do you have for early stage startups from Ukraine, looking to raise capital, and what advice would you give them?
First, do your homework, because you have to look. You also, it's not about only VC selecting you; it's also about you selecting VC, right? You have to, once you, because a lot of people just do spamming. So first, do your homework, prepare your data room, prepare all of the materials you have and everything to back what you're doing. That's first. Second, also research what funds actually uh, have the right thesis for you, right? In terms of the market, in terms of the stage, in terms of the verticals, in terms of the heritage of their fund. Because if there is a lot of funds, but they're, some of them already zombie funds, and zombie fund is a fund who distributed all of the capital and haven't raised a new fund. So basically, why would you waste your time of reaching out to those funds who on a fifth year, on a fourth year, right? Usually you distribute all of your money within the 5 years. So maybe they have some cash left to back up the company if it's going to be in a trouble, kind of as a safety belt, right? But not investing into the new deal. So you have to look for the funds who had just raised the funds. And also metrics. You have to know all of your metrics, because without this, it's just waste of your time. And of course, before raising, you have to start build the relationship with VC, so, and get on the radar. And that was actually the advice I gave to the startup, because I spoke today. They were like early stage. They start getting the traction, but they never raised money. And I'm told them like, it's like, oh, we want to have a VC who will help us with partnerships and this and that. I'm like, guys, this is nice, but no one's gonna do your job. Like, you haven't validated your growth engine. Now you have money quick to kind of finish the product, to finish your MVP, and basically that also to get this um, revenue margin that you're expecting to have, and also and to validate, and then you can go to VC and start raising like a proper seed money. Why would you onboard someone right now? And VC capital is the most expensive capital in the world. Sorry. So do your homework, know your metrics, know how you can grow and go and raise a bigger fund, and you get less diluted. I mean, it's probably VC people will hate me, so I'll give away the secrets. But I mean, I'm a founder and operator turned VC, so I'm kind of more on the founder side.
It's a lot of feedback we've heard on Emergence Global series, because a lot of the people we've actually interviewed who are VCs, a lot of them are actually surprisingly founders, and I think they have actually been very successful because they know they have the best advice for founders because they've been in their shoes. So yeah, no, look, Andrew, I really want to thank you for your time today. If you don't mind just uploading your presentation just so everyone can see your email in case they have any questions, I think that could be good just before we log off.
Sure. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. So that's my email. You can find me, Andrew Zinchuk, Zas Ventures, az@zas.ventures. So if you're interested, in partnership, if you need any help or any collaboration here in terms of Ukrainian market or Eastern Europe, especially like Romania, Baltic states, Poland, it's very strong presence in this market. And if you're also interested in investing in a fund that's going to be diversified across 34 investments in the most resilient startups in the world, this is kind of your best money invested ever. You can trust me on this one.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And thanks for everyone for watching. If you're watching it from YouTube, yeah, you can find his email here. If you guys are watching from Crisp, then also, yeah. But thank you very much today for your time, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for inviting. Pleasure talking to you.